let me just start off by saying this, that I was one of those very fortunate people that got through my entire adult life and never had to work for a living. They paid me very well to play rock and roll records, and then I went to work for a mouse. Now, how tough is that?
I love it. This is the Talking Archive, and we're hearing the voice of Tom Kennington. He's a radio personality as well as a publicist for Walt Disney Productions. He did that for about 16 years, and I think that was the title. I'm not sure what it was exactly. Manager of promotions at Walt Disney World, and then director of filming.
Yeah. I was in promotions, and then I was out at the Walt Disney Studio, the Disney MGM Studios when that opened, because I was manager of promotions, I handled all the radio and TV that originated on the property. So when we opened up the studio, I'm the one that had all the contacts out in Hollywood. So I moved out there over to the studios, and I had the greatest job in the world. My job was to bring in movies and TV shows to shoot on our sound stages on the back lot. So I spent a lot of time out in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. I had a fabulous time, met a lot of great people, and enjoyed every single second.
All right, and we're going to find out more about those people in a little bit. And Tom, tell us about your background growing up and how you got into radio.
Oh, okay. I grew up in Gainesville, Florida. Moved to Lakeland when I was in the 10th grade. I always had this fascination with radio. As a matter of fact, when I was just a young kid, like 7, 8, 9 years old, I would sit in front of my grandmother's the combination remember the old radio and phonographs, mm-hmm. And I would play radio. And I had some old 78s, and I would play disc jockey. And when it came time for the news, I'd turn on the radio. So I have basically played radio since I was just a kid. I actually got my first start in Lakeland in the 10th grade when the station WLAK in Lakeland gave 30 minutes to Lakeland High School, and I was the host of that show. Well, at the end of the school year, I got to know the people at the station, and I actually went on and started doing 4 to 6 in the afternoon, playing music and doing that. So I did that through my 11th grade because I didn't get out of school till 3, so I would do 4 to 6. Mm-hmm. And I did that all through the 11th grade. But my senior year, I didn't have time for it because I was president of the student body and I was involved in a lot of other things. And I didn't have time for radio. But when I got to the University of Florida, I went to work at WDVH in Gainesville. Mm-hmm. And I worked my way through the university doing the morning show at DVH. And once I graduated, I went to WPDQ in Jacksonville. And at the time, it was like not an easy listening station, but it was a little more middle of the road. Mm-hmm. But then I was there when Mike Ranieri came in, and we turned that sucker top 40, and we beat APE in one book.
Wow!
And I was lucky enough I was doing afternoon drive, Ranieri did the mornings, and we were very, very close friends. And I was there when we were number one. We went from not even rated till number one in one book.
Wow! What was besides you and Mike, of course, what was the magic formula that made that happen?
We played the hits. That was a whole new concept. As a matter of fact, it was so funny. This is a true story. I'm really jumping ahead now because I'm skipping all over Jacksonville and Cincinnati. But when I was national program director for Roundsville, and came into to Orlando, and we changed the station from unrecognizable to top 40. I'll never forget going out and one of the advertising people we were going with says, it sounds like that all you are doing is playing the hits. I said, yeah, we're going to try that for a while and see how it works. and we took WVJW BJ 105 to number one in one book. So I was very fortunate that when I was in Cincinnati, I was at WSAI, mm-hmm. and that was just a great radio station. And I worked with a lot of very good people, including Jim O'Brien, who later went over to FIL.
Interesting you mentioned Jim O'Brien.
He went to FIL before he was killed in a skydiving accident. I also worked with Dusty Rhodes, mm-hmm. who was still in Cincinnati as city executive, and with a lot of others. That was a great experience. Then I went to FUN in Miami and had a great time down there. I was a PD there at FUN for a while as we competed with QAM. And we competed with them very well in the daytime, but at nighttime we had no nighttime signal at all, and they just buried us at night. But it was from FUN that I became National Program Director, and that's when I moved to Orlando, because we had stations in Orlando, Jacksonville, Miami, and Tampa, as well as Cincinnati and Nashville. But I could drive all the stations in Florida, and I just had to fly up to Cincinnati and Nashville just about every 6 months, which was no big deal.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that, and it was from there that I started doing with the stations we had. We started doing promotions with Walt Disney World.
Oh wow!
And now to do a real jump cut back to when I was in Miami. I was in Miami at FUN when Disney World first opened. And I remember going up there like that first year, and I'll never forget the first time I walked down Main Street with my wife. I told her, I said, one of these days I'm going to work for these people. And it took 13 years, but I finally made it. And that's when I went into marketing because, this is interesting, I was hired by Walt Disney World Marketing because of my radio background. And I was brought in because I had all the contacts with the people in Florida. I knew who everybody was. And I could bring, and also around the country. And I could bring in, stations to do live broadcasts, which of course was great publicity for Disney World. And I did that. And then when when the studios opened, I moved out there, and I was also working bringing in TV. So I had a fabulous time out at Disney because I dealt with the radio and TV and with movies. Met a lot of great people. We did From the Earth to the Moon with Tom Hanks, and he was a delight to work with.
That was a great movie.
Yeah, and we shot it. They shot all the exterior stuff over at the Cape, and they did all the studio work with us. And all the soundstage work was done on our sound stages. And I met Tom, worked with him, and with the other producers, and it was that was really a great experience. I also worked with on Instinct. We shot that there with Cuba Gooding Jr. And it was so I really had a really great time. And but what happened is when Michael Eisner built the studios, he thought it was like a half-day event, but it turned out to be so successful that they realized that they didn't build it big enough. So what they had to do is they had to take the sound stages and turn them into attractions for capacity issues. So when that happened and we stopped doing production, I had a chance to go back to parks marketing. But at that point, I'd been with the company like almost 15, 16 years, and I figured I'd been there and done that, and I could retire, and I did. And so I retired at age 59. I still, have my lifetime pass. We still go out to the parks quite often.
That's great.
And we take, and I can take, others with me because I was an executive with the company, and so it was I like I say, I got through my entire adult life and didn't have to work for a living. So that basically is a synopsis of my life, done in about 3.5 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, definitely, and we're going to get into greater detail with that. And who were some of your broadcasting idols growing up? Radio personalities you admired growing up?
Well, that's very interesting because, like I said, I grew up in Gainesville, Florida. So the only stations outside of Gainesville or Jacksonville that I could pick up was at night. On a good night, I could get LAC in Nashville. So Big Hugh Baby was a big hero of mine, and John R. At LAC in Nashville, because that's the only thing we could pick up. But when I was my uncle owned a grocery store. That was back before Publix and all the big chains. He owned a grocery store in Gainesville, and so when I was a young teenager, like 13, 14, I used to work at the grocery store. And I would when I would work produce, well, they have the radio in produce. And my hero at that time was a local disc jockey at WDVH called Bill Maher. And I thought that he was just great. Well, as it turns out later, I worked with Bill at DVH. When I got up and got into college, went to DVH, he was still there, and he was just as wonderful to work for and work with as he was when, because I did the mornings and he did the afternoons, and it was really something working with one of my heroes.
What was something insightful that Bill Maher taught you as far as the radio industry?
Oh, gosh. I don't know if I could narrow it all down. I mean, he really taught me. I mean, that was really my first real job at a real radio station. So he was very instrumental in helping me understand, how you can communicate ideas and be a personality without talking a lot. And that is something that I learned, and when I became a program director in National PD, I used to tell my jocks that you don't have to talk 5 minutes to communicate something. The more talented you are results in the fact that in the more you can say in fewer words. And I said, when you're on the air and you've got music rolling and you've got the momentum of a show going, don't bog it down to stop and talk a lot. Get all your thoughts and ideas together and get it communicated in a short period of time, and that way you'll keep everything flowing. And so that was one of the things he taught me, and I learned that extensively. And the other was about how to treat people. He was a wonderful manager, and he always his door was always open, and if you had an idea, you could bring it. And I learned that quickly, and I learned how that benefited me when I was a program director. That all of the jocks felt they could just come in and sit down and talk and give me ideas. And it was really funny that when I was at was it SAI or FUN? I had a newsman named Sam Jones, and Sam used to come in more than the jocks did. And he would have, every week, 100 ideas. 99 of them were horrible, but the one that was good was outstanding. And and so I learned very quickly that some of the best ideas come from the people who work with and for you, not just out of your own mind.
Wow, that's great. And you said that WSAI was your favorite place to work, and that the studios there were awesome. Describe those studios, because the description is fascinating.
Okay, yeah. Now, when I said that, my favorite, I loved every station I worked for. I loved PDQ in Jacksonville, loved FUN, loved SAI. I loved them all. But the thing about SAI is that if you're familiar with Cincinnati, there's like 7 hills. It was like Rome. And the station was on top of Price Hill. And we were right at the very top of the hill, and the station was built there, and the whole side of the wall that over and it overlooked the city, and it overlooked the river and everything along there, the Ohio River, and the whole wall of the building was glass from floor to ceiling. And so the control room was built there, and when you did the weather, all you had to do was turn your head to the right, and you could see exactly what was going on all over the area. And I'll never forget one time, and this is a true story. It came time for the weather, and I looked out, and the sun was shining over the Columbia Park. If you're familiar with Cincinnati at all, the Columbia Parkway runs by the Ohio River. And the sun was shining down on the Columbia Parkway. A little to the left of that was downtown Cincinnati, and it was raining, and it was snowing outside of my window on Price Hill.
Wow.
All three, sun, rain, and snow, all going at the same time in an area that I could see. And I tell you, it was really beautiful at night. You go up there at night, you see all the lights of the city and everything. It was just a fabulous location for a radio station. It was a fabulous location for a control room, and every jock that worked there, had just loved it. And I worked with some very interesting people. I don't know if you heard the name Tom Dooley. Dooley was a jock. He wound up, I think, in Louisville. Unfortunately, he passed away a little bit ago. But Dooley used to follow me at 6 o'clock, and I was like that. I was the program director, and I still did 3 to 6. And it never failed that he never showed up until the first song after the news at 6 o'clock. And he'd come out and go, Dooley, I said, you don't have to be at work till 6 o'clock in the evening. How can you possibly be late? But he would always at least show up by the by the first record anyhow. So,
did he ever joke about it on the air? Because I worked with Machine Gun Kelly in Los Angeles, and MG was notorious for getting there just in the nick of time, and he made jokes about it on the radio. It was like, all right, everybody, get out of the way. I'm going to be late. I'm going to be late. I'm going to be late. It's like, and they played Fred Flintstone. It was like, Oldies 93, CBS FM. He just made it. Machine Gun Kelly.
No, we never really talked about it on the air, but that was it. He would always just get there just, right during the record. I mean, they'd done the news, and I'd had the first record going, and I'd go, Dooley, why, can't you get here 5 minutes earlier? I mean, you don't have to be here till 6 o'clock at night, for goodness sake, sir.
It's interesting. Jim O'Brien, though mainly in Philadelphia, he was also program director of the legendary 93 KHJ in Los Angeles. He replaced the original PD, Ron Jacobs, in 1969. He was there for about a year and a half. And I found out later on, after the real Don Steele passed away, Don was afternoons on that station for many years, that Jim was the only PD that Don actually liked. And Don would call him Job because he always signed the memos J-O-B. But Don loved Jim O'Brien. And you and Jim did an interesting thing, a putt-putt marathon, world marathon record, by playing the game for nearly 58 hours. Tell us about that time.
I think it was somewhere around, I should have this right. I think it was like 54 hours and 45 minutes or something like that. Yeah, we were doing a promotion. Putt-Putt was one of our advertisers. Mm-hmm. And they were saying, what can we do, for promotion? And like an idiot, I said, well, why don't we just do a putt-putt marathon? And they went, wow, what a great idea. So O'Brien and I, in fact, he had a great promotion. He did a singing promotion for it. And it was like Tom Kennington and Jim O'Brien going to play putt-putt. And he brought these kids in the recording studio just to go putt-putt, putt-putt. Yeah, it was a great promo. So we decided, we'd go out and do that. So we did. And now, actually, when you do marathons, there are real rules for it. And you had like I forgot it was like a 10-minute break every 2 hours or something like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think we went for like 54 hours and 45 minutes. And then the next week, that was actually the world record for 1 week. Then 1 week later, some kid out in Kansas went for 100 hours, and we said, he's got it. We're not going to try to beat that. It was all we could do to do 54 hours. We ain't going to try to do 100.
What was the regimen that you did to stay awake all that time?
There really was none. I mean, I'm trying to remember who it was. One of our other sponsors brought food out to us. They brought meals out, and we would take our break and to eat. Mm-hmm. But no, right there, it was difficult. At 2 and 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. But we did. We kind of cajoled each other, and there were always some other people there. We were not just alone. There were some other who they weren't there the whole time, but we were not just there alone.
Yeah, we're talking with Tom Kennington, longtime radio personality, program director, as well as the head of marketing and promotions at Walt Disney World Resort. Now, next time, Tom talks about some of the most memorable radio personalities he ever got to work with. Some of them reminded him of the characters on WKRP in Cincinnati, plus a very famous TV personality. Tom was the very first program director to ever give him a job. We'll find out who that is next time